When the Navy ordered him to abort, he should have turned back. That was the protocol. That was survival. But instead, alone, outnumbered, and deep over enemy-controlled waters, he pushed forward, until he downed 9 Zeros, by himself. It was the early months of 1943, over the vast contested skies of the South Pacific. The island chain of Guadalcanal had only recently fallen under Allied control after months of brutal fighting. Yet the war for air superiority was far from over. Japanese forces, flying the deadly Mitsubishi A6M0, still dominated large stretches of the sky. Agile, lightweight, and deadly in experienced hands, the Zero had already built a fearsome reputation. Opposing them were U.S. Navy pilots flying the rugged but slower Grumman F-4F Wildcat, a plane that lacked the Zero's maneuverability but could absorb punishment. On this particular mission, one pilot would face odds no training manual could prepare him for, and what happened next would become legend. Please subscribe to our channel as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life. The pilot at the center of this story was Edward Henry O'Hare, already a decorated naval aviator by the time of this mission. Serving aboard the aircraft carrier USS Enterprise, CV-6, O'Hare had earned his reputation as a calm, disciplined, and deadly pilot. His earlier actions in 1942 had already placed him among the Navy's elite. But this mission was different. By early 1943, the Pacific Theater had entered a grinding phase. Control of airspace over islands like Guadalcanal and the Solomon Chain meant the difference between supply lines surviving or entire garrisons being cut off. Every patrol mattered. On the morning of February 1943, O'Hare and his squadron were tasked with a routine combat air patrol. Their objective was simple: intercept any incoming Japanese aircraft attempting to strike Allied positions. The skies were clear. Visibility stretched for miles, but that clarity came with danger. Any movement could be seen from far away. By 0900 hours, radar operators detected incoming contacts. Fast, numerous. The Japanese were coming, and they were coming in force. O'Hare and his wingmen scrambled to intercept. Engines roared. Propellers cut through the humid Pacific air. Within minutes, they were climbing hard toward the incoming formation. But something went wrong. A communication breakdown. Conflicting vectors. And suddenly, O'Hare found himself separated, isolated from the rest of his squadron. Alone. By 0915 hours, O'Hare reached altitude, around 18,000 feet. Below him stretched the endless blue of the Pacific. Above, nothing but sky. And then, he saw them. 9 enemy fighters. A full flight of Mitsubishi A6M0s, flying in loose formation, scanning for targets. They hadn't seen him yet. 9 against 1. Standard Navy doctrine was clear. Disengage. Avoid unnecessary risk. Preserve the aircraft and pilot. Moments later, the order came through his radio. Abort. Return to base. Do not engage. For most pilots, that would have been the end of it. But O'Hare hesitated. Below those Zeros lay Allied ships, supply vessels, Marines on the ground who depended on air cover to survive. If those fighters got through, the consequences would be catastrophic. He checked his ammunition. Limited. Fuel. Enough for one engagement. Maybe. Distance from support. Too far. Everything pointed to one decision. Turn back. Instead, he pushed the throttle forward. At 0920 hours, O'Hare dove. The Wildcat screamed as it plunged from altitude, engine roaring at full power. The element of surprise was his only advantage, and he used it, closing fast. Within seconds, he was behind the trailing Zero. He fired. The twin .50 caliber machine guns erupted, sending streams of tracer rounds into the enemy aircraft. The Zero burst into flames almost instantly, its light frame unable to withstand the punishment. 1 down. The remaining 8 scattered, but it was too late. O'Hare was already among them. What followed was chaos. The Zeros regrouped quickly, their pilots experienced and disciplined. They turned as one, forming a defensive circle, a classic Japanese tactic designed to trap and overwhelm attackers. Now O'Hare was the hunted. 8 fighters against 1. They came at him from all directions. Machine gun fire ripped through the air. Tracers streaked past his cockpit. The Wildcat shook violently as he pulled hard into evasive maneuvers. The Zero was faster, more agile. It could outturn the Wildcat in a dogfight. O'Hare knew this, so he didn't dogfight. Instead, he used speed, Diving attacks, high-speed passes, he struck and withdrew, refusing to be drawn into a turning battle. At 09:23 hours, he lined up another target. A zero broke formation. Just for a second. That was enough. O'Hare fired again. Another burst, another hit. The enemy aircraft spiraled downward, trailing smoke. 2 down. But now they were onto him. 3 Zeros dove in from above. Another pair climbed to cut off his escape. The sky was shrinking around him. Inside the cockpit, the noise was deafening. The roar of the engine, the hammering of machine guns, the wind screaming past the canopy. Sweat ran down his face despite the cool air at altitude. Every movement had to be precise, every decision instant. One mistake, and it was over. At 09:26 hours, his aircraft took its first hit. A burst of enemy fire struck the fuselage. Warning lights flickered, controls stiffened, but the Wildcat held. O'Hare rolled hard to the left, diving again. He spotted another Zero climbing too slowly. He fired. The rounds tore through the enemy aircraft's wing. It snapped, sending the fighter tumbling out of control. 3 down. The remaining Zeros grew more aggressive. They knew this was no ordinary opponent. They tightened their formation, coordinated attacks, relentless pressure. O'Hare was running out of options and ammunition. By 09:30 hours, O'Hare's situation was critical. Fuel was dropping, ammunition nearly gone. Enemy fighters still circling. And yet, he pressed on. Because below him, the fleet still needed protection. Because turning back now would mean leaving them exposed. And because, in that moment, retreat was not an option. He climbed again. One last push for altitude. The Zeros followed. At 18,500 feet, he leveled off, then suddenly rolled inverted and dove straight through the center of their formation. It was a desperate move, and it worked. And the sudden maneuver broke their coordination. For a brief moment, the Zeros lost their advantage. O'Hare seized it. He fired his remaining ammunition in controlled bursts, short, precise, deadly. 1 Zero caught fire immediately. Another took hits to the engine, trailing smoke as it veered away. 4, 5, 6. The sky was littered with falling aircraft, but still, they came. At 09:34 hours, with his guns nearly silent, O'Hare made one final pass. He targeted a Zero attempting to regroup. A short burst, direct hit, 7, then 8, and then silence. His guns clicked empty, but the final Zero, already damaged, struggled to maintain altitude. O'Hare stayed on it, shadowing, forcing it lower until it finally spiraled into the ocean. 9 enemy fighters, downed by 1 pilot. The sky was clear. The threat was gone. And somehow, he was still alive. At 09:40 hours, O'Hare turned back toward the carrier. His aircraft was damaged, fuel dangerously low, but it was still flying. As he approached the USS Enterprise, CV-6, deck crews watched in disbelief. 1 aircraft, returning alone. They had expected losses, casualties. Perhaps none would return. Instead, O'Hare landed safely, and his report stunned everyone. 9 enemy fighters destroyed, single-handedly. The engagement would become one of the most extraordinary aerial actions of the war. For his actions, Edward Henry O'Hare was awarded the Medal of Honor, the United States' highest military decoration. His courage, skill, and refusal to abandon the mission had saved countless lives. But beyond the medals and recognition, his story carried a deeper meaning. It was a testament to the power of individual resolve, to the weight of decisions made in seconds, and to the extraordinary things a single person can achieve against impossible odds. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to our channel as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.